Well, the United States' top intelligence official, the CIA director John Ratcliffe, says new intelligence suggests that the American strikes on the Iranian nuclear sites had left them severely damaged and that Iran's nuclear program could take years to rebuild. Several officials within the Trump administration, including the president himself, have insisted that the sites were, in his words, totally obliterated. Well, meanwhile, an Israeli assessment says that the US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, combined with its own attacks, have set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons by years. It comes off the back of a leaked Pentagon assessment suggesting Iran's program had probably only been set back by a few months rather than years. Well, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth criticized those American media outlets for carrying that initial assessment by the Pentagon intelligence agency, saying that it was preliminary.
And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment, you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated.
A bullish Pete Hegseth there. Well, let's bring in my colleague Dan Johnson, who is live with us from our Jerusalem bureau. Dan, while the row goes on about the extent of the American damage on Iran's nuclear sites, Donald Trump has also weighed in on Benjamin Netanyahu's political and indeed legal woes at the moment. Tell us more.
Yes, this is a posting by the US president on his Truth social network. He's written a huge, long post, quite extraordinary, writing there his support for Benjamin Netanyahu. Donald Trump said that Netanyahu was a great wartime prime minister, a warrior who was facing a ridiculous witch hunt. He said they'd been through hell together and that Netanyahu could not have been better, sharper or stronger. The US president again talked about the elimination of Iran's nuclear weapons and said that they'd been fighting for the survival of Israel. He said that he just found out Netanyahu would be summoned back to court next week, and that is the latest stage of a corruption trial that Benjamin Netanyahu has been facing, these allegations that he's been facing over the last few years. That case has been going through the courts in recent months. The Prime Minister's had to give evidence there. Donald Trump says that that is politically motivated, a horror show, which he says should be cancelled, or Benjamin Netanyahu should be pardoned for. He's called it a travesty of justice and said that after saving Israel, the US would now do what it could to save Benjamin Netanyahu.
And Dan, while the focus has been very much on Iran, of course, over the last 2 weeks, there are several other hotspots of hostility in the region, not least in the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, where there has been renewed violence and indeed fatalities there. Give us the latest on that.
Yes, all quiet overnight in terms of Israel-Iran. That ceasefire does seem to be holding, but still there is loss of life in Gaza and also in the West Bank, something that hasn't had a lot of attention over recent weeks, but something that has been ramping up ever since the October the 7th attacks. Israeli settlers who are raiding Palestinian villages, setting fire to homes and cars, and this is what we saw last night. Dozens of masked figures ransacking a village, a town just to the northeast of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. They were carrying sticks, they were setting fire to vehicles and to Palestinian homes. The Israeli military says that soldiers were called to respond to a confrontation there, both sides throwing stones at each other. The Israeli military says its soldiers came under attack and that's why they opened fire. 3 Palestinians were shot dead there, at least 7 were injured. It's the sort of thing that we've seen repeatedly carried out by Israeli settlers and increasingly over the last few months. A reminder that Palestinian lives are at risk in the West Bank as much as they are in Gaza.
Dan Johnson in Jerusalem, thanks very much indeed. Well, as Dan was saying, the ceasefire with Iran appears to be holding for now. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is in Tehran. She is being allowed to report from there on condition that her reports are not broadcast on the BBC's Persian service, which broadcasts to the people of Iran. This law is being applied by the Iranian authorities to all international media outlets in Iran. She says that on the streets of Tehran there is a growing sense of returning to normality.
Enormous relief that the bombs have stopped falling. You can feel even hour by hour the rhythms of the city returning, if we can say normal, but that's only on the surface. Just a short time ago I saw a group of young Iranian men and women, all of them in their running gear. It's a beautiful summer's day here. Traffic is starting to return. The first international flights will happen today. The internet is restored, so Iranians can use many social media apps are banned here at all times, so they use VPNs to get around them. So conversations are starting online, some for and some against the governments. But you can see on the streets of Tehran, there are still cafes and shops and government offices which are still shut. So many people left this city when Israel started attacking, and some of them haven't come back yet. They want to be sure that this ceasefire is going to hold. The officials here are maintaining a very defiant tone. The president, Masoud Pezeshkian, had sent a message to the nation last night hailing the resilience and the defiance. Last night we went to a concert in a landmark square here in the city, Azadi Square, Freedom Square. It's where Iranians often gather at defining moments in history. And underneath this beautiful, iconic shrine of the soaring white marble, the Tehran Symphony Orchestra was playing. And Iranians came and talking to them. Some supported the government, some didn't support the government, but they were all there to listen to the patriotic songs and say, really worrying for this moment. The emotions are still raw, worried most of all about their future, of the future of their country. And yes, the conversations will start in public and private, but right now Iranians are just trying to come to terms with the enormity of what has been happening here.
Lise Doucette in Tehran.